Hello, welcome back to Your Town television program. My name is Mark Baer. I'm happy to present Bryant Austin, and great artist, photographer, and we're going to talk about whales here and your photography of whales. And I think before we get going, I'm going to show some photographs.
Oh, sure.
And that'll let people know what we're into here.
Sure.
Let's see some of this. So tell us what we're looking at here.
That's a life-size photograph. It's 4 by 6 feet. It's actually 2 photographs. It's of a whale that I know is an individual, and I spent 5 days with her, up to 6 hours a day. Her name is Ella. And I'm not sure if the next photo will be this same photo, but up close.
Let's take a look.
That's up close. So I make photographs of whales that are life-size, but not in terms of dimensions, not just dimension, but the level of detail. So in that photo, you can see inside her pupil. This is her right eye. You saw the left eye in the other photo. And she was 4 feet under me. My shadow, I cast a shadow over her eye, and I had to wait for her to swim out of my shadow of my body to make that photograph. And that's a close-up of a much larger photograph. This is a photograph I wanted to make life-size, but was unable to. I was still learning. This was 8 years ago. It's a calf and her mother in a remote region of the Kingdom of Tonga. This is another calf. There's a very interesting story with this calf. I can share that with you during the interview. That's the same calf. That's a photograph that I did not include in my collection, but the curators I've partnered with and for exhibitions all over the world love this photograph, and it's become the icon for all of our exhibitions. And yeah, that's a book that I will be releasing in April with a foreword by Sylvia Earle. It'll include life-size photographs of the eye, and it'll include full-body composite photographs of whales that have gatefolds, and they'll fold out as wide as 5 feet in the book. So it's really exciting.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So anyway, our next show at the Museum of Monterey is called Beautiful Whale.
Yes.
By Bryant Austin. And I'm thrilled about this. These things are, again, you don't get from the photographs the scale of what we're looking at here, but it's absolutely magnificent. Who are you and how did you start doing this?
Well, you know, it's interesting hearing Jeff mention he was a painter or is a painter, and I started out as a painter, and I always would burn myself out, and I realized it's the 4 walls that was burning me out. You quickly realize how limited our imagination is if we rely solely on our imagination. You have to put yourself out into the world and experience it. And I found that painting failed to convey what I was experiencing, so the camera is very objective in doing that. So I just put down the brush and picked up the camera, and that was 25 years ago.
Yeah, well, where did the whales come in?
Well, you know, the whales, I really had no interest in photographing them. I had an interest in helping them since I was very little, but never knew how. And I volunteered with many organizations, including the Monterey Bay Aquarium with their sea otter research program as a volunteer. I've worked with a variety of organizations, government, non-government, and I was never satisfied. And I even, you know, explored my interest in photographing whales in '94 in the Azores. It was a childhood dream of mine. And after that experience, I thought it was incredible, but it's not going to help them. There are plenty of talented photographers out there photographing whales. They don't need one more. And so I spent another 10 years essentially burning myself out, doing all these other things I thought would help whales. And I finally gave up and just said, you know what, I'm just gonna create and take photographs of them and see if there's a way to help them. So it started with that intention.
And what do you consider to be your unique voice in this world?
Well, it's really their unique voice, but I'm a conduit. So what I'm relaying to the rest of the world is something that's really beyond our imagination, something that less than 1/1,000,000th of 1% of the human population will experience, and that is an inquisitive whale coming to you as close as you and I are now, which is probably a little over 4 feet, and to come to look into your eyes on their terms and stay with you. It's a very unique experience, and one that defies words, and the word whale is meaningless during those encounters. And I've come to recreate those sensations. I've come to make photographs of these creatures that are on their scale. And for me, that's the starting point, is okay, you know, I I want to do more with this, but for now I have to work out the methods and techniques just to make them life-size, and that took 8 years.
So how did you get yourself into a comfort zone? I mean, it's not just a matter of getting down and getting close to a whale and taking a picture. There's a whole big process here, and it's a comfort, and it's a language, and it's a being able to inhabit that space and communicate. I assume that's where you go.
Well, yeah, and you know, I talk about the world being bigger than our imagination, and with whales in particular, when I worked with them 12 years ago here in the Monterey Bay, above water, I should say, my mantra was, I don't know. I'm with them out there while they're foraging, while they're swimming around. I'm not going to motor up to them to take a picture. It's wrong. It feels wrong. I feel bad when I do it. You know, when I've done it once, it's not the right, you're communicating intention with whales, so you can communicate that you have no respect for them and you're just going to do what you want. And so I was just left with, well, I don't know. And it was 2 whales in particular that opened my eyes. And one whale forced me to lower my camera because he was going to strike it. He was so close to me, and he was a young 5-week-old 2-ton calf, and he came right up to me and turned away at the last moment, and I had to lower my camera, so I put it down, and I looked up, and there was this belly button closer than you are to me right now, and I never would have dared to swim that close to a whale. And this was the first time I was presented with something, you know, it's such a close to intimate distance, a vulnerable distance, and I could see their true colors. They have colors. They're, you know, mostly we see them as muted blue, but when you're that close, you see these shades of green and all these different colors. It's incredible. And you see their subtle tone changes. You see parasites crawling on him, skin peeling off. And I could see his skin and musculature move and flex over his frame like this as he was powering down his tail one more time, and the tail literally just went like this. And so I was just floating there at the surface on snorkel, thinking about that, and it really gave me pause, and I thought, there's something there. And before I could think about it any longer, I just felt a tap on my shoulder, and it was too solid of a tap to be human. And so I looked, and it was Mom. They had swam up to me, and I ended up in between them, which is dangerous and not recommended. She raised her 15-foot-long, 2-ton pectoral fin to touch me with the very tip of it to let me know she was behind me. And she could easily have broken my back. And she chose to just touch me very gently. I mean, it would take no effort to injure me, none at all. And it was the first time, I do this because that's what I did. It was the first time I was ever eye to eye with an adult whale. And it was special because both these whales, it was on their terms. I was floating motionless, just observing them. And they came to me. And when it's on their terms, you see it in their eye. They have a very heavy-lidded, calm, mindful gaze looking at you. It's not wide-eyed like this, which is often what you see when you swim after them or swim down to them. They're straining. They want to know where you're going, what you're doing, so they don't hurt you. You know, they don't want to touch you. And that's where it started.
Did you feel that sense of concern, that sense of peace, that sense of...
Well, I think in that moment, I do feel that when I'm with them, but in that moment, I felt bad. I felt really bad being in between them, and I was actually shaking. I was looking at her, and you know, the sun was coming over my shoulder, so she was completely illuminated. She was just looking up at me, wow. And I was speechless. I went back to the boat and just sat on the flybridge just to be alone and try to reconcile this. And I just sat there listening to my inner voice trying to tell me what I need to do. How do I reconcile this? And all that kept coming back was, you have to leave home. You have to leave all that's safe and familiar. And that's what I eventually did.
So how are these conversations going in the future now? Because that's what I guess that's what these are. Or how do you are they encounters? Are they conversations? Are they?
Sure, they're nonverbal communication, and you're communicating intention. And so what I strive for in doing this work is I'll spend 3 months with a specific group of whales. It has to be a small group because you want to increase the chances of sighting the same whale over and over. Everything about my work is consistent, visually, behaviorally. What I wear is visually distinct and consistently worn. My behavior is consistent, respectful, slow, predictable, motionless most of the time. I use the same boat with the same acoustic signature from its outboard motor, the same skipper who has his own behavior, the way he operates the boat that gives it a personality. So there's just this whole baseline of consistency. And then you wait. You wait 3 months. And if you're lucky, you'll recite the same individual well maybe 5 or 6 times, and you're communicating a level of intention. You're saying, I'm interested in you, but I'm going to be respectful and predictable. The rest is up to them.
And have they taken you as friend?
I don't know about friend, but they will certainly explore their natural curiosity and come right to me. There are many accounts of humans reaching out to bottlenose dolphins in the wild, for instance, who befriend them, and they have 20-year relationships. And that's never been done with whales. It's very difficult. They cover a much wider region, and yeah, that's a whole other monster.
So what are you learning? What have you learned?
Well, I think the thing that's most meaningful to me in this whole experience is what I've learned is that it really hasn't mattered where the work is shown. Whether it's in a country that commercially hunts whales, I've shown in Norway and Tokyo, or here in the States, the work has the ability to affect change, to give viewers pause and move audiences, no matter where it's shown. And it's that universal effect that inspires me to continue. I've often wanted to give up many times because it is difficult work on a lot of levels, but seeing how people respond, especially in Norway and in Tokyo, that keeps me going. And it's not just whaling. I wanted to share with what I felt were the most difficult audiences in the world, and I felt that if I could move journalists in those countries, which was really exciting, I didn't expect that there would be hope to draw attention to the far more serious global scale issues that whales face. And that's something I'm exploring now over the next 4 or 5 years.
Let's talk about the book for a second.
Sure.
And so this is a big deal.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful.
Yeah. And it's going to be, tell me a little about it. It's going to be published when? And
it's my first photography book. It's being published by Abrams, and it will be released in April of 2013. And again, this is a book that will have 1-to-1 scale photographs of the eye of whales. So my photographs are massive. My largest is 10 by 36 feet, and it weighs 1,200 pounds. So we can't put those in the book. But if you zoom in on the eye, those are in there. And then for those really big photographs, we make them small, but they're still very long. So they'll have gatefolds. And as I mentioned earlier, the widest will be 5 feet. So this book will be 30 inches wide, and then you just grab the 2 pages, and now it's 5 feet wide, and you can just study the entire length of a whale. And these are photographs that are not individual photographs. These are mosaics that are comprised of up to 20 individual photographs.
Yeah, I think that's what people need to understand.
Yeah, and I didn't mention that,
Yeah.
And the process it took 8 years to develop, and it's essentially a high-resolution scan of a whale. Excuse me. So while I'm doing all this waiting for a whale, when they do come to inspect me 6 feet away, I have a 50-megapixel camera that has a telephoto portrait lens. The camera goes on its side like this, so the widest area coverage is vertical. And I photograph them in 5-foot wide sections, about as wide as this table. And then I piece them together back home on a very powerful computer.
How long are these encounters usually?
I've had encounters last anywhere from 30 seconds to 6 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's 6 hours like?
6 hours
Wow.
is fun. That was with Ella. She's a dwarf minke whale from the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. And I was at Anchorage. I chartered a vessel for this work. We were at the same Anchorage for 5 days on a reef out on the Great Barrier Reef. And I'd wake up in the morning before sunrise and prepare my coffee and look out the porthole. And I would see a dorsal fin go by, and I'd see another.
Wow.
Our boat would be surrounded by 14 whales, and I would get in, and there would be Ella. She was right there among them, and she would come closer than all of them. And in fact, the thing I love most about Ella is I had to transfer to another vessel at sea. And I was in the water with her, and the dinghy from the other boat came to pick me up and brought me over, and Ella came over to the other boat, and I continued to photograph her from the other boat.
Wow. So let's talk about your future. What are you seeing?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the original focus was on whaling, and it still is to some extent, but that's something whaling represents about 1% of what's killing dolphins, porpoises, and whales, the commercial hunting of cetaceans. And really, it's our lifestyle choices globally that are doing more damage than anything else. And so I want to draw attention to these issues. And One project that's real ambitious is the creation of a high-resolution, life-size photograph of a living whale entangled in fishing gear. This is something that will be 60 feet wide, 10 feet high. It may never happen, but I want to make the effort and explore processes to do that safely. So that's probably the #1 project on my mind right now.
So just before we leave, what are people going to see at the Museum of Monterey?
Well, that actually is really exciting for me because what they will see at the museum is my entire body of work that's never been shown together in the United States. It's work that's been brought over from Tokyo and that's shown in Norway as well. And it's all being brought together for the first time at the museum. So it'll include my second largest photograph that's 6 by 30 feet of a dwarf minke whale, my very first full body composite of a sperm whale that is 6 by 20 feet, and then many, many large portraits that are anywhere from 4 by 6 feet to 10 by 6 feet.